It seems like she might be possessed by the devil. I was crying in the club, and by the club I mean work. BuzzFeed, white woman, feminism, girl power, girl boss. It's very violent, which I like. This is garbage, and it is so good. Hi, I'm Sam. There's quite literally no one asking me to do this, but I would like to tell you all about the books that I have read in the last 2 months. So I want to start with the 2 reads that were just okay, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on those. The first of those being The Beach by Alex Garland. I read that for a book club. It was fine. This is about a guy who is traveling in Thailand, and he stumbles upon this map to this mysterious secret beach, and the book is about him attempting to go and find this secret beach. Yeah, I didn't really like the main character. He sucked. It felt very much like a product of its time, aka the 1990s, and I had a reading blog about it, so I talked about it quite a bit as I was reading it. So I guess if you're really interested in that book, you could go watch that vlog for more details about my thoughts on that book. I don't know, I didn't really like it. And then the next read that was pretty average, or just kind of like, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on, is a short story collection. So I am still on a quest to become a short story girly, and it just really doesn't seem to be happening. So that is Cassandra Saw by Gwen E. Kirby. I mean, the cover's really cool, and some of the stories were interesting, but for the most part, this was kind of just like hashtag BuzzFeed, white woman, feminism, girl power, girl boss type stories. So wasn't that much of a hit for me. The only one that I really remember and might remember a while from now is the story that was structured as a Yelp review. So it started as this guy giving a review of this restaurant, and then as he's writing his review, we're getting more and more of his story and his relationship with his wife and their dynamics. So I think that the structure of that story was really interesting. Otherwise, I don't really think I'll remember much about this collection. Now I'm going to talk about the books that I either really liked or really didn't like, and I'll just go chronologically. So the only book that I read in February, I only read a single book, and I just had a great time with it. I was really taking my time with this, savoring my reading experience. So that was Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. I had read Stoner in January. I already ranted and raved about that in a video, and I am happy to report that this one was also amazing. So this is different from Stoner in that we are instead in the 1870s out west, and we're following a main character named Will Andrews who drops out of Harvard because he wants to go west and hunt buffalo and discover himself. Basically, he's like having his midlife crisis a little early, but I guess the average life expectancy in that time was shorter, so maybe it was really a midlife crisis. Anyway, he stumbles into Butcher's Crossing, which is a small Kansas town, and he meets these men who he pays to take him out west to hunt some buffalo. And it is similar to Stoner in that it's very contemplative. We're very much following this main character who is trying to find himself and find meaning in life, really. The rich buffalo grass, upon which their animals fattened even during the arduous journey, changed its color throughout the day. In the morning, in the pinkish rays of the early sun, it was nearly gray. Later, in the yellow light of the mid-morning sun, it was a brilliant green. At noon, it took on a bluish cast. In the afternoon, in the intensity of the sun, at a distance, the blades lost their individual character, and through the green showed a distinct cast of yellow, so that when a light breeze whipped across, a living color seemed to run through the grass, to disappear and reappear from moment to moment. In the evening, after the sun had gone down, the grass took on a purplish hue, as if it absorbed all the light from the sky and would not give it back. So yet again, we're seeing John Williams' command of description and setting a scene and building this atmosphere in such a gorgeous way. Yeah, I mean, you can see I also annotated the crap out of this one. This one was really good. I will say I don't think I liked this one quite as much as I liked Stoner, but it still was very, very, very good and well worth a read. One really great strength of John Williams' writing, which I don't remember if I mentioned when I discussed Stoner, is that he was so talented at writing characters and dialogue in such a way that you immediately get a sense of who they are. And that is so impressive to me that after reading a single line of dialogue, I can get a pretty good grasp of who that character is what drives them, what their personality might be like. And I don't think there's any other author that I've read who is able to do that masterfully. So yeah, peeps, I think if you are interested in reading more books written by poets, you definitely need to check out John Williams. If you have read some of his stuff and liked it, you're gonna like Butcher's Crossing too. So definitely add this one to your list. Okay, and then since I was just on a huge John Williams kick, I then proceeded to read another book of his, Nothing But the Night. And interestingly, if I had read all of his book synopses prior to choosing which one to read first, this one probably would have appealed to me the most. But now that I've read 3 of his books, I think this is actually my least favorite of those 3. And I say least favorite, but I still tabbed the crap out of it and still really enjoyed my time with this. But this is more of a psychological noir. We're following Arthur Maxley, who is very emotionally troubled. He has dropped out of college and is really just like holed up in this hotel room that his father pays for. His mother is gone. His father is gone for work, so he's very much left to his own devices, and it's very clear from early on that there is something haunting him and there's some sort of like unresolved trauma. And then now his father has come to town and wants to reconnect with his son, and we're sort of following Arthur as he is dealing with the anxiety of that impending visit. It's like anxiety and excitement, but he was a really weird character, and this definitely felt the most different of the 3 John Williams that I've read. So Stoner and Butcher's Crossing definitely felt similar in vibe, and like the main character felt kind of similar. This one was pretty different, but I did still sense John Williams in the writing. I also think the opening chapter of this book is very bizarre. It's like a nightmare sequence, and it's probably one of the best written nightmare sequences I've ever read. So in this nightmare, he's at a party. Yet from his separate dimension, he was allowed to observe this gathered party. And he saw them as if they writhed and postured on a glass slide beneath an incredible microscope. He saw the party mask, the false redundant smile, which was a brief display of the oral cavity, showing moist pink gums, freshly scrubbed, the bluish enamel of dentrificed teeth, the grim muscular retraction that screwed the face into a network of grimace and wrinkle, an anatomical experiment designed for charm. Yeah, that's just like insane to me. No one was doing it like John Williams. He seemed involved in an inner restlessness which neither allowed him to be at ease with himself nor with others. He sat forward in his chair, tensely, as if on the verge of leaping to his feet and fleeing in sheer panic. Yet he was seen frequently here and at other similar gatherings, always a bedeviled alien, a misfit. Always and without fail, each of these functions hung about him like an ill-fitting suit. For he was unnoticed and alone, and no one knew him. His name could be spoken by a few, and that was all. The bare essential facts of his life were included in the knowledge of no person here. They were not deemed important enough to consider, much less to investigate. To these people, he was a noise without meaning, an explosion without disruption. Yeah, okay. Again, guys, I cannot say this enough, but you should be reading John Williams. So I've talked about 3 of his books so far. I think you should read all 3. Okay, next I read The Case Against Satan by Ray Russell. And this was a buddy read with Angie from Maybe I'll Read Today. I also talked about this in that reading vlog I mentioned earlier in this video. So I talked pretty extensively about it there, but I'll still kind of touch on it here because it was really good and I do think you should read it. This is a classic horror exorcism possession story, and it's really short. So we're mostly following these 2 church officials. I don't remember their exact titles. I think one was a priest and then one was like a super priest where he's like the boss of priests. I don't know what that's called. But we have these 2 church men who are having to deal with this young girl who is plagued by fits. And it seems like she might be possessed by the devil. So I was really pleasantly surprised by this because I went into this pretty much expecting it to be like every other possession story I've ever seen or read. Mostly because this was written so long ago. So I was expecting this to be sort of one of the original possession exorcism stories that the current ones draw from. So very pleasantly surprised by this. I think it was a very unique exorcism possession story, and I recommend it. So you should read it. And then you could also go watch my vlog where I talk about it as I'm reading it in real time. Next, I read a manga series. I became so hyperfixated with it that I have already bought like the first 6 volumes, but I read all 12 volumes of Yakuza Lover by Nozomi Mino. Okay, look at the cover, think about the title, think of what you think this story is gonna be, and that is exactly it. This is garbage, okay? This is trash shoujo dark romance manga. It is trash, okay? And it is so good. We have this random young beautiful protagonist who has a chance encounter with a Yakuza boss, and then of course they like fall in love at first sight, and he's like, I must be your lover, you know. And as I said, it's like you could already kind of guess what's gonna happen. It's cheesy, it's not very groundbreaking story-wise, but it's just freaking good. It scratched that itch in my brain that I needed for just like an easy read. I will say there were a couple unique things about this that I enjoyed. I enjoyed that the main character, or the main love interest, is actually kind of a unique design. Like, he's not your typical shoujo romance male lead. He has like a distinct look, and it's kind of non-traditional. So I liked that. I also like, it's not like this series was trying to be something it's not, you know. It definitely leaned into the tropes that you would expect from this kind of series. And basically, if you are even a little bit intrigued by this title or cover, it's almost a guarantee you're gonna like it, you know? Next, I read one that I was almost certain I wasn't gonna like. I kind of alluded to it in my book haul video when I got this. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. So that is A Girl on the Shore by Inio Asano. I mentioned that I wasn't sure if I would like this because there are a ton of sex scenes, like very graphic sex scenes, because we're following these two teenage kids who are in this like sleepy town. They're both miserable for their own reasons, and I kind of just thought it would be like these two insufferably miserable kids who are just throwing themselves into mindless sex to like numb the pain. And to some degree that really is what they were doing, but Inio Asano just is another very masterful writer. He really knows how to write a story. A lot of the strength of Inio Asano's stories is that he writes about a lot of mundane slice of life events that I think almost everyone could relate to some degree, but he's able to write it in such an affecting way where it's not relatable in such a way that it's not impactful, you know? It's relatable in a way where I could not put this down and I was crying before bed, you know? So this blew my mind. I was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I did. It's very bleak, heartbreaking, and sort of in that kind of way where it's just like, that's just life. And it's really sad. It's really sad. I would definitely check content warnings before you dive into this. I think if I had been at a worse place with my mental health, this would have been kind of damaging. So definitely take care of yourself, check content warnings. It was one of the most impactful and like heart-wrenching things I've read so far this year. So this is definitely one that will stay with me for a long, long time. If you're a fan of Inio Asano, you know his art is fantastic. You know he is a master of capturing human emotion and the complexities of it. But yeah, wow, his storytelling it's on a whole nother level. I really think you should read this if you can. Next, I read one I've been really wanting to read for so long, Hound by Ken Greenhall. Everyone who I told I was gonna read this was like, that book is a little banger. You are going to love it. And they were right. They were right, let me tell ya. So I've talked about this a couple times on the channel, but for those of you who have not heard of this is about a dog who is really smart and violent, and we're mostly from his point of view. At the beginning of the story, we're introduced to him, and he is owned by this old woman, and he is contemplating what would happen if one morning when she got up and was about to head down the stairs, if he were to accidentally bump into the back of her legs a little too hard. What would happen if she fell down the stairs? What would happen if she cracked her head open? So this definitely lived up to the hype. I think it's very interesting to be from the point of view of a homicidal animal. That's super fun and cool. I wasn't expecting this to be as well written, if that makes sense. I was expecting this to be more like Yakuza Lover, where it's like you go into this expecting like a cheesy, goofy, silly time, you're not expecting Nobel Prize worthy writing, you know? So I was expecting Hellhound to be pretty cheesy, silly, funny, goofy time, which it was to some degree, but it also had really well-written characters, and the way that the characters fit together and their dynamics was really interesting, and I just loved this. This was great. Another one where you definitely want to make sure you're checking content warnings because there is some super messed up stuff happening, and I loved it. Okay, next I read another one on my physical TBR. That is The Horizon by J.H. I didn't like this. So I had pretty high hopes for this because I was sucked in by the concept that it's these two young kids traveling on their own after this apocalyptic event, and all of a sudden they start to get followed by this man who doesn't speak and just steals all their food and water. I like the idea of this ominous, unknowable force, so I was really excited, but this ended up just kind of not doing it for me. The art was pretty cool in some places, but I just feel like we have seen so many zombie stories, and the trope of the biggest danger not being the zombies, but just other survivors, and hell is other people, that kind of thing. So I don't really think this was doing anything that new. I don't think I need to continue on with the series. I didn't like it. I can't recommend it, guys. Sorry. Next, I read the first volume of Dorohedoro by Q Hayashida. So this is a series that has been recommended to me for years and years. And really what happened is that I finally watched the anime. It was only a single season, so I wanted to pick up the manga so that I could read the whole story, because I'm not sure that the series is gonna be fully animated. I mean, I obviously liked this. The art style is very interesting and unique. It's very violent, which I like. I am continuing on with the series, so I actually have like almost the whole series right here with me because I was luckily able to get it from the library. So okay, I still haven't talked about what this is about. Doing this a little backwards. This is about a guy named Kaiman who wakes up one day and has no memories, but he has a lizard head and a human body, and they live in this disgusting, dirty city called the Hole, and it's where non-magic users live, but then they're somehow connected to this other world where sorcerers live, and sorcerers can conjure these doors to come to the Hole. And a lot of times sorcerers come to the Hole to practice their magic on humans. So Kaiman has a lizard head because magic was done on him by a sorcerer who turned his head into a lizard. So really, at its heart, this series is like a mystery series because Kaiman is trying to figure out who did this to him, who he is, regain his memories. So we're following him and his gal pal, Nikaido. And Nikaido is also like super jacked. So she and Kaiman basically like hunt sorcerers in the Hole and try to get information out of them to learn more about who Kaiman is. I think it's really interesting how all the sorcerers have different powers, so it's kind of fun to meet new sorcerers and figure out what their powers are. It's also very funny. There's a giant cockroach character named Johnson who wears sneaker high tops, and there's a scientist character in the series who basically like wires up this like neural helmet thing so that he can control Johnson and like train him, and he's like teaching Johnson all these different words, and he's so funny. He's the funniest character, and I think they captured his spirit so well in the anime too. So this is really funny and gory, so I think you should read it. Okay, and then last but not least, I read Interesting Facts About Space by Emily R. Austin. I would say this was probably one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I really liked Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by her. And this definitely had the same kind of cheeky, weird girl, snarky, I don't know how to be a human type vibe, which I liked. In this book, we're following a woman who works, I think at NASA, or like some space job, and it's really just her navigating her life and feeling like an alien, dealing with unresolved trauma. And I would say probably like the first like half to 3/4 of this, I was like, this kind of just feels exactly like Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead. But then there's like a scene with the main character and her mom, and they like finally start to talk about their mental illnesses, and that got me. I was crying in the club, and by the club I mean work. So yeah, I listened to this on audiobook and it was really good. So yeah, Emily R. Austin has cemented herself as an author that I will always try to read when she comes out with new stuff. Okay guys, that is what I read in February and March. I had a pretty good last couple months. So, you know, you could like this video if you wanted. You could comment about like what you're reading, if you've read any of these books, if you liked them, if you hated them. You could watch my other videos if you wanted. You could subscribe. Thanks for watching. Love you guys very much, and I'll see you in the next video I make. Okay, bye.